Hello everybody, this is Dr.G.P.Sudhakar, Professor of Management from Hyderabad, India. Right, so in this specific video, I'm going to explain you about finance. Finance is very important for any business organization. Finance is the important resource for any business organization in order to develop a product or a service. Right, so as part of this specific video, we are going to discuss about what is the definition of finance, what are all the different components of finance, what are all the different components of finance. We are going to discuss, right. Followed by we will see a couple of examples as well, financing examples, right. Basically, when you say finance, what is the meaning of finance? Finance means it is about money matters. Finance means it is about money matters of a business organization. It is about money management of a business organization. Finance deals with money management of a business organization particularly, right. Whether it is a product oriented company or it is a services company, finance deals with money management of the company, right. So when we say what are the different components of finance, what are the different component of finance? See, first one comes different sources of finance. First one comes different sources of finance. So when you say sourcing of finance to a company, means different ways, different alternatives are there for sources of finance. For example, if it is a startup, usually entrepreneur himself from his savings he will invest in the startup. That is one way, is to personal savings of the entrepreneur. Otherwise, the entrepreneur looks at other sources like relatives and friends. That is another source of financing for a startup. Otherwise, he will look at angel investors or any venture capitalists. That is another way of financing for a company. Or he may go for even IPO, that is initial public offering, issuing share capital of the company. That is also one way to finance a company, right. Another one is taking loans and debt from the banks and financial institutions, taking loan from the banks and financial institutions. So like this, different sources of finance are available for any business organization, right. So based on whether it is a listed company or it is a startup, at what stage the specific organization is there, different sources of finance can be chosen, right. For financing can be done, for one is for the investment purpose, or for growth purpose, or to pay back to the debtors. So in to deal with all these aspects, sources of finance an organization looks for, different sources of finance an organization looks for, right. Now let us see what is the second component of finance. Second component of finance is cost accounting and budgeting. Cost accounting and budgeting, basically it deals with what are the different costs, expenses incurred by the organization, right. Whether it is employee salaries and wages, or raw material expenses, product development expenses, what is the cost, right, being incurred by the organization in order to develop product or service. That is the cost accounting or budgeting it deals with, right. And third component of finance is the financial accounting. See, basically when you say financial accounting, what all will come into picture? Balance sheet will come into picture, profit and loss account will come into picture. Balance sheet comprises assets and liabilities, and assets several categories: fixed assets, current assets, working capital. Different categories of assets are possible. Similarly, liabilities, current liabilities, debtors, like the different categories of liabilities are possible for a business organization. So basically, balance sheet comprises assets and liabilities. This comes under the financial accounting. Similarly, profit and loss account, preparing profit and loss account. Usually organizations prepare profit and loss account, balance sheet, at the end of the financial year, or sometimes organizations even go, every quarter also they can prepare the balance sheet or financial balance sheet or profit and loss account, right. On need basis also, sometimes at different intervals, this financial accounting can be done for a business organization, right? So now the fourth category of finance component is the working capital. See, basically working capital, it deals with day-to-day expenses. How can we get raw material for today? No, how can we get for the organization? So how can we run the day-to-day operations of the organization, keeping some money for day-to-day operations? That is nothing but the working capital, right? And fifth component of finance is capital budgeting. See, basically capital budgeting, it deals with different acquiring assets. Acquiring assets, for example, you want to set up a manufacturing plant in another region, right? So how can you get the capital for it? That is, deals with acquiring assets and all, capital budgeting, right? So another one is and they are also known as capital decisions. For example, acquiring fixed assets, manufacturing plant, building, these kind of assets, right? Another one is sixth component of finance is the investment. Sixth component of finance is investment. Investments are of two types. One is long-term investment and another one is short-term investment. See, long-term investments, it deals with investing in some fixed assets like a building, manufacturing plant in any another region, or like that. Long-term investments, they give recurring income to the organization long after certain time. Long-term investments, right? So short-term investments, they deal with short-term investments like project investments, or any program investments, for 3 to 4 years duration, or 2 to 5 years duration. These are the short term investments. They also keep giving recurring income for the organization, right? So like this, investments are of two types. One is long term investment, other one is short term investment. And also short term investments, for example, a huge corporation investing in a startup or fin technology company, any other drones company or internet of things company, that is also short term investment. Usually they invest, they keep invested for 3 to 4 years, and after that period they will sell their stake to another venture capitalist, and they make money out of their investment. Like that, short term investments in another startup is also possible for the huge organizations, right? So another component of finance is the managing debt. This is very much important. Managing debt, see, for example, there are two aspects of growth. One is growing on the profits, other one is taking debt and growing. Taking debt and growing, growth can be is possible in two ways. One is growing on the profits of the organization. Second one is take the debt and invest in that in projects, and then grow the organization, scaling the organization. So like this, debt management is very much important for any business organization, right? See, it is best practice to have 15 to 20% of your revenue at the most as your debt, for the organization. That means a business organization, it is best practice to have 15 to 20% of their annual revenue only as debt, so that they will be able to pay back the debt. That is one of the best practice, so that your long term survival of the business organization can be ensured, right? That means, some in the future you have to pay back based on your profits, what that you make every year, you have to pay back to the debtors, right? That is managing debtors, right? That is about managing debt. So another component of finance, that is eighth component, is managing equity. Managing equity, is of it deals with issuing shares to the shareholders, similarly paying dividends to the shareholders, issuing shares, debentures, you know and also managing equity means, what is the promoter's stake in the company, what are the how much are the retail investors, how much is the institutional investors in the company, right? So all these aspects will come into picture about related to managing equity. That is share capital, right? So another component of finance is the venture capital management. See, basically VC management, it deals with, for example, where do VCs come into picture? For example, you want to, as a startup, you want to scale up the startup organization. Their venture capitalists come into picture, and they invest certain money in the company, and they take certain stake in the company. For example, you are a startup, right? So usually organization venture capitalists, they assess your valuation of your startup at 8 to 10 times of your annual revenue. They say they will evaluate your startup at 8 to 10 times of your annual revenue. So for example, venture capitalists investing $1 million in your startup means they will take 10% of the equity in your organization or 5% of the equity in your organization based on your annual revenues and valuation of the startup. Venture capitalists decide this much amount to be invested, this much stake we want in your company. That is related to venture capital management, also one of the component of finance, right? So the 10th component is profit sharing. See, basically, every annually, after financial accounting, after balance sheet preparation and the profit and loss account preparation, organization comes to know this is the profit we made in this specific financial year. So profit sharing with the employees, profit sharing with shareholders, profit sharing with promoters, if there are many number of promoters, this is also part of financial management of the company. Financial management, profit sharing, so like this, there are different components related to finance, right, for any business organization. Right, now let us see the examples, different examples. For example, Singapore SoftBank, they made series of investments in financing to Flipkart. Right, this is very popular example. So another example is, Asian Development Bank, it is financing around $500 million to Bangalore Metro Rail project. Asian Development Bank is investing around $500 million to the Bangalore Metro Rail project. This is also another source of finance, for this kind of infrastructure projects, right? So like this, finance plays a major role in a business organization success. Financial management or financial accounting deals with money management of the organization, right? Whether it is, in increasing revenues or in reducing the costs, finance plays major role in reducing the costs as well. Finance plays major role for a business organization, right? Thank you, everybody.